I didn't become the man you deserved in time. And that truth sits in me like a quiet, permanent ache. I've built a life that looks complete from the outside. People see stability, success, something that resembles certainty, but they see the silence that waits. Everything slows down. They don't hear the way my thoughts echo at night, asking questions I spent years avoiding. I gave my patience to people who never stayed. I offered my softness to those who only knew how to take. And somewhere along the way, I hardened just enough to survive, but too much to feel alive. Now, I find myself thinking about you, someone I haven't even met, yet somehow already miss. Tell me, if I had learned how to love the right way sooner, would you have found me before I became this tired version of myself? I don't know if you're near or far real, or still just a quiet promise written somewhere beyond me. But I do know this. I'm trying to become someone who won't lose you the moment you arrive. I'm more tired than I let people see. Not the kind of tired sleep fixes, the kind that settles in your bones after too many quiet disappointments. I'm not young anymore, not in the ways that matter.
I've lived enough to know what absence feels like, even in a crowded room. And I've lost enough to recognize when something inside me starts shutting down instead of opening up.
I almost didn't say this, but I'm talking to you, whoever you are, wherever life has kept you from me. Something inside me won't let me stay silent anymore. There are nights I still sit in the dark kitchen, long after everything else has gone still. No music, no distractions, just the hum of a refrigerator and the faint sound of my own breathing, uneven, like it's carrying something heavy. I remember one night in particular. There was a cup of tea in front of me that had gone cold hours before I noticed. I kept staring at it like it might explain something, like if I just waited long enough, it would tell me where everything went wrong. It's strange, the things that stay with you, not the big moments people expect, but the small ones, the quiet exits, the messages that stopped coming, the way someone's tone changed before they disappeared completely. I used to tell myself I was strong for not reacting, for not chasing, for not asking why. But the truth is, I was afraid that if I asked, I'd hear something I couldn't recover from. Afraid that if I tried to hold on, I'd only prove how easy I was to leave. So I stayed quiet. And that silence, it cost me more than I understood at the time. There was a night, I remember it too clearly. The door closed softer than I expected. No shouting. No dramatic goodbye. Just a quiet click and the feeling that something inside me had been taken without asking. I stood there longer than I should have, hands still, eyes fixed on a space that no longer held anything. I never said this then, but I will now. That moment didn't just hurt, it changed me. It taught me how to detach before things could matter too much, how to care just enough, but never fully, how to keep a part of myself hidden, even from the people I claim to love. And I carried that version of me forward, into conversations, into relationships, into places where I should have been present, but wasn't. I remember sitting across from someone who was trying to understand me. She asked simple questions, the kind that shouldn't be difficult to answer. What do you feel? And I froze, because I didn't know anymore, or maybe I did, and I just didn't trust it enough to say it out loud. I gave her fragments, carefully measured pieces of truth, enough to keep her close, but not enough to let her see me completely. And eventually,
She left too.
not because she didn't care, but because I didn't know how to let her. I never said this then, but I will now. I pushed pushed away things that might have stayed because I didn't believe I was someone worth staying for. That's the part I don't show anyone. The quiet belief that no matter how much I achieve, how, how stable I seem, how composed I appear, there's something in me that makes people leave. And I hate that I believe that. But it's there. It lingers in the way I hesitate before opening up, in the way I prepare myself for endings, even when something is just beginning. I learned how to succeed in everything that didn't require my heart. Work, responsibility, control. All the things that make a man look dependable. But love doesn't respond to control. It doesn't stay because you've earned it. It doesn't wait for you to feel ready. And I wasn't ready. Not when I should have been. There were moments I look back on now, moments where someone stood in front of me, offering something real. And I met them with hesitation, with guarded words, with a version of myself that was already halfway gone. I didn't lose them all at once. I lost them slowly, in pauses, in half answers, in the distance I created without even realizing it. And when they finally walked away, I told myself it was inevitable, that people leave, that nothing stays. But that wasn't the whole truth. The truth is, I never gave them a reason to believe they should. Sometimes, late at night, I think about you. Not in a perfect, idealized way, but in a quiet, almost painful curiosity. I wonder what it would feel like to meet you now, as someone who has finally started to understand what he's been doing wrong. Someone who doesn't run at the first sign of closeness. Someone who doesn't mistake distance for strength. I think about how I would sit with you, not distracted, not guarded, just
Present.
I imagine listening,
Really.
listening, not waiting for my turn to speak, not calculating what to reveal and what to keep hidden, just hearing you. Because I know now that being seen isn't about proving anything, it's about allowing. Allowing someone to witness the parts of you that aren't polished, the parts that hesitate, the parts that still hurt in ways you don't fully understand. And I want to be that kind of man for you. Not perfect, not unbreakable, but honest. Even if that honesty feels unfamiliar at first. Even if it shakes the version of me I spent years building just to survive. There's a quiet part of me that wonders if maybe all of this had to happen, not as punishment, but as preparation, like something, I don't know what to call it, fate, maybe, or something softer than that, kept letting me fail until I understood what it means to truly stay. Because staying isn't about never leaving physically. It's about not disappearing emotionally when things become real. And I've disappeared too many times. I won't pretend I fixed everything. I haven't. There are still moments when I feel that instinct to pull back, to protect, to shut down before something can reach too deep. But now, I notice it. And noticing feels like the beginning of something I didn't think I'd ever have again. Change, slow, uncomfortable, but real. If you ever find me, I won't promise you a man who has it all figured out. I won't promise you someone who never struggles with the past. But I will promise you this. I won't stay silent when something matters. I won't pretend I don't feel just to protect myself. And I won't let fear decide how much of me you're allowed to see. Because I've lived that way before. And all it gave me was empty rooms, quiet nights, and memories of things I almost had. I don't want almost with you. I don't want something that fades because I was too afraid to hold it properly. I want to learn how to stay, even when it feels unfamiliar, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it means facing parts of myself I spent years avoiding. And maybe that's the closest I've ever been to being ready for you. I don't think people realize how quietly a person can start disappearing while still showing up every day. I still wake up on time. I still answer calls. I still sit in rooms full of people and say the right things at the right moments. But there's a part of me that's been fading for years, not all at once, not in a way anyone could point to, just slowly. I almost didn't say this, but I'm talking to you, the one I haven't met and somehow already feel accountable to. Something inside me won't let me stay silent anymore. There was a morning not long ago. The sunlight came through the window in that soft, quiet way it does when the world hasn't fully woken up yet. Dust floated in the air, a stillness that should have felt peaceful. But it didn't. I stood there, holding a cup of coffee, and realized I couldn't remember the last time something actually reached me, not distracted me, not occupied me, reached me. That scared me more than anything I've been through, because pain, I understand pain. Loss, betrayal, absence, they leave marks, but at least they prove something was alive. But numbness? Numbness feels like the slow death of something you can't even name. I never said this then, but I will now. There were moments I chose numbness on a purpose. Moments where I felt something real trying to rise, and I pushed it down because feeling meant risk, and risk meant loss, and I had already lost enough to start believing that anything good would eventually be taken away. So I became careful, measured, controlled. I told myself that was maturity, but it wasn't. It was fear wearing a calm face. I remember a conversation, someone sitting across from me, eyes soft in a way that asked for nothing except honesty. She didn't want perfection. She didn't want promises. She just wanted to know I was there. And I wasn't, not fully. Part of me stayed distant, even as I nodded, even as I spoke, even as I tried to convince both of us that I cared. I did care. That's the worst part. I cared, but not in a way that made her feel safe. And caring that isn't felt might as well be silence. She looked at me at one point. I remember this clearly. And there was something in her eyes I didn't understand at the time. It wasn't anger. It wasn't disappointment. It was resignation. Like she had already accepted that I wasn't going to meet her where she stood. And I let that moment pass. I didn't reach for it. I didn't stop it. I just watched it fade. I never said this then, but I will now. I let something real slip away because I didn't know how to hold it without fear. And that realization didn't hit me immediately. It came later, in pieces, in quiet moments where everything else had already fallen away. Like one night, I was lying awake, staring at the ceiling, the room dim, except for the faint light from outside. And it hit me. Not all at once. Not like some dramatic awakening, but like a slow, undeniable truth settling into place. I wasn't unlucky in love. I was unavailable in ways I didn't want to admit. That realization, it stayed with me. It followed me into everything, into how I spoke, into how I listened, into the pauses between words where I used to hide. And slowly, something uncomfortable started happening. I began to see myself clearly, not the version I showed people, not the composed, controlled, reliable version, but the one underneath, the one who was afraid of being left. So he left parts of himself behind first, the one who didn't believe he was worth someone staying for. So he never gave them a reason to try. And facing that, it wasn't strength. It felt like standing in front of everything I had spent years avoiding, with no way to look away. There are still moments now where I feel that instinct rise, to pull back, to soften the truth, to protect myself before anything can get too close. It hasn't disappeared, but something has changed. I don't trust that instinct anymore because I've seen where it leads. Empty spaces, missed chances, people who might have stayed walking away quietly because I never showed them they could. And I think about you in those moments. Not as some perfect idea, not as someone who will fix everything, but as someone I don't want to meet as this half version of myself. I want to meet you present. Even if that presence is imperfect, even if it trembles sometimes, even if it means you see the parts of me I once tried to hide, there's something else I need to say. And I don't say this easily. I've spent a long time believing that love had to be earned through effort, through proving, through being enough in all the ways that are visible. But I'm starting to understand that real love doesn't arrive because you've perfected yourself. It arrives and asks you to be seen as you are. And that's what I've been afraid of all along. Not love itself, but being seen without the armor I've relied on for so long. If you ever stand in front of me, I don't know exactly what I'll say. I don't know if I'll have the right words, but I know this. I won't hide behind silence anymore. I won't let moments pass because I'm too afraid to step into them. And I won't let something real become another memory I revisit with regret. Because I've done that already, too many times. There's a quiet hope in me now, fragile. There's uncertain, but real. The kind that doesn't shout, the kind that barely speaks at all, just
stays. And maybe that's enough for now. Maybe that's where something different begins. Not with certainty, but with the willingness to feel again, even knowing what it costs. If you ever find me, I hope you don't meet the man I was.
I hope you meet the one who is still learning, still softening, still trying to become someone who can finally stay. I still catch myself preparing for endings, even when nothing is wrong. It's a quiet habit now, a reflex I didn't choose but learned. I've lived long enough to know how quickly something warm can turn distant, long enough to recognize the subtle shift in tone, the delayed replies, the way presence slowly becomes absence. And somewhere along the way, I stopped waiting for it to happen. I started expecting it, but almost didn't say this. But one who might one day sit across from me and wonder why I go quiet when things feel too real. Something inside me won't let me stay silent anymore. There was a moment recent, nothing dramatic, no argument, no reason to feel unsettled, just a simple evening. I was sitting by the window, the city dim and distant, lights flickering in that quiet, indifferent way. My phone was beside me, and for no reason at all, I felt it, that familiar tension, that subtle tightening in my chest that whispers, this won't last. There was no evidence, no sign, just memory replaying itself in a different shape. I've learned that fear doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it comes disguised as intuition, as caution, as a voice that sounds like it's trying to protect you. But it's not protection. It's anticipation of loss. I never said this then, but I will now. I've ruined peaceful moments by bracing for pain that hadn't even arrived. I've sat next to something good, and instead of letting it reach me, I started quietly preparing for how it would end. And that distance, even when everything seems fine, it's something I'm still trying to unlearn, because I see it now. I see how it shows up in small ways. In the pause before I respond, in the way I hold back just a little more than necessary, in the way I measure how much of myself I reveal, as if I'm negotiating with loss before it even happens. And I hate that part of me, not because it exists, but because I know where it came from. It came from nights where I gave everything I had and still wasn't enough. From moments where I stayed, even when I should have walked away, hoping that love would eventually choose me back. It came from being left in ways that didn't make sense. No clear reason. No explanation that matched the depth of what was lost. Just silence. And silence can be louder than anything. It fills in the blanks with doubt. It turns questions into conclusions. It makes you wonder what was wrong with you, even when you never did anything wrong. I carried that silence with me into new beginnings, into moments that deserved a clean slate, but never got one. I never said this then, but I will now. I let the past speak in places where it didn't belong. And it cost me more than I realized at the time. There's something I've never admitted out loud, not fully, not in a way that didn't soften it or explain it away. But I'll say it now. I'm afraid that if I let myself love you fully without holding anything back, you'll see something in me that makes you leave too. Not immediately, not obviously, but eventually. And that eventually, that's what stays with me, because I've seen how things change, how feelings shift, how people who once looked at you like you mattered slowly stop seeing you at all. And I don't know if I could go through that again. Not in the same way. Not after everything it took just to feel again. But here's the truth I can't ignore anymore. Avoiding that risk, it doesn't protect me. It just guarantees that I never experience something real enough to be worth the risk in the first place. And I don't want to live like that anymore. I don't want to meet you with half a heart, with careful words and controlled emotions. I don't want to give you a version of me that's already preparing for your absence before you've even had the chance to stay. That wouldn't be fair to you. And it wouldn't be honest to what I'm starting to feel inside me now. Because despite everything, there is still something in me that wants to believe. Not blindly, not naively, but quietly, carefully. Like someone who has seen what love can take, but still chooses to reach for it anyway. I imagine you sometimes, not in details, not in a face or a voice I can describe, but in a feeling, a presence that doesn't rush me, that doesn't disappear the moment things become real. That doesn't require me to be anything other than honest. And I wonder if you'll notice the way I hesitate at first. If you'll see the pauses in my words, the moments where I almost retreat into silence. I wonder if you'll understand that those pauses, they're not distance. They're me learning how to stay, learning how to not run from something that feels like it matters. Because staying is something I'm still figuring out, not physically. I've always known how to remain. But emotionally, that's where I used to disappear. That's where I used to protect myself at the cost of everything else. And I don't want to do that with you. Even if it scares me. Even if it feels unfamiliar. Even if every instinct I've built over the years tells me to hold back just a little more. I want to try. Not perfectly. Not without fear. But honestly, because I think maybe love was never about being fearless. Maybe it was always about being willing even when you are. If you ever find me and you notice the way I go quiet for a second too long, or the way I look at you like I'm trying to understand something I've never fully understood before, I hope you don't see that as distance. I hope you see it as effort. As someone unlearning years of silence, trying in real time to become the kind of man who doesn't let something meaningful slip through his hands again. And maybe if you stay long enough to see past that hesitation, you'll find something in me that I've been trying to reach for a long time. Something softer, something real. Something that doesn't disappear the moment it starts to matter. Because I don't want to lose you, not to fear, not to silence, not to the parts of me I'm finally starting to understand. And for the first time in a long time, that fear isn't pushing me away. It's pulling me closer to something I don't want to miss. I don't know if I'll ever meet you. And that uncertainty sits with me more often than I admit. Not as panic, not as desperation, just a quiet awareness. Time moves. People pass through each other's lives. And sometimes the ones meant to stay arrive too late or not at all. I almost didn't say this. But I'm talking to you, the one I keep making space for, even without knowing if that space will ever be filled. Something inside me won't let me stay silent anymore. There's a chair across from me most nights. It's nothing special, just part of the table. Unremarkable in every way. But I notice it more than I should, because it's always empty, not just physically, but in a way that feels like something was supposed to be there and never arrived. I've tried to ignore that feeling, tried to fill it with noise, work, routine, people who passed through quickly enough to distract me, but never stayed long enough to matter. And for a while, that worked, or at least it looked like it did. But emptiness has a way of returning when everything else quiets down. It waits, patient, unbothered by how much you try to cover it. And when it comes back, it doesn't ask for permission. I never said this then, but I will now. There were nights I questioned if I had already missed the kind of love people talk about. Not because it didn't exist, but because I wasn't ready when it came near me. Because I was too closed, too guarded, too busy surviving to recognize something that required me to feel. And that thought, it stayed with me longer than I wanted it to. There's a particular kind of regret that doesn't shout. It doesn't demand attention. It just settles. In the way you pause when something reminds you of what could have been. In the way you hesitate before allowing yourself to hope again. In the way you carry a quiet question you never fully answer. Was it my fault? I've asked myself that more times than I can count. Not in anger, not in blame, just trying to understand, trying to find meaning in things that never gave me clear reasons. And the truth I've come to isn't simple. It wasn't all me, but it wasn't never me either. There were things I didn't know how to give, things I didn't know how to receive. Moments where love stood in front of me and I didn't recognize it for what it was. Not because I didn't care, but because I didn't know how to believe it would stay. So I treated it like something temporary, and eventually That's exactly what it became. I carry that with me now, not as punishment, but as awareness, a quiet understanding of what I don't want to repeat, of what I would do differently if I ever get another chance, if I ever get you. I don't imagine perfection anymore. I don't imagine something effortless or easy or untouched by the reality of who I am. What I imagine is something honest, something that breathes, something that allows space for mistakes, but doesn't run from them. I imagine sitting with you, not trying to impress you, not trying to be anything more than what I am in that moment. A man who has learned slowly, painfully, that love isn't something you protect yourself from. It's something you step into knowing it might change you in ways you can't control. And maybe that's the part that used to scare me the most. Change. Because I spent years building a version of myself that could withstand anything, that wouldn't break easily, that wouldn't depend on anyone. But that version of me, he couldn't love properly either. He could function. He could function. He could provide. He could stay physically present. But emotionally, he kept one foot out the door. Always ready. Always prepared. And I don't want to be him anymore. Even if letting go of that version means feeling things I've avoided for a long time, even if it means risking something I'm not sure I can fully recover from. Because what I've realized is this: avoiding love didn't protect me from pain. It just protected me from connection. And a life without connection, it doesn't feel like living. It feels like waiting. Waiting for something that never quite arrives. Waiting for a moment you keep telling yourself will come later, until one day you realize how much time has already passed. I don't want to wait like that anymore. Not for something that matters this much. So if you exist somewhere, if you're moving through your life unaware of me, just as I've been unaware of you, I hope when our paths finally cross, I'm not the man who hesitates too long. I'm not the man who lets silence speak for him. I'm not the man who watches something meaningful slip away because he's too afraid to reach for it. I hope I'm someone who recognizes you, not because you're perfect, but because something in me feels calm in your presence instead of guarded, because that's how I think I'll know. Not through intensity, not through overwhelming emotion, but through a quiet sense that I don't have to protect myself from you, that I can just be. And maybe that's what all of this has been leading to. Not a perfect ending, not a guarantee forever, but a moment where I finally choose differently, where I don't let fear decide what I lose, where I don't hold back just enough to ruin something that could have stayed. If that moment ever comes up, I won't waste it. Not this time. Even if it scares me, even if it feels uncertain, even if part of me still whispers that things don't last, I'll choose to stay fully, honestly, without preparing for the end before the beginning has even had a chance to breathe. And if you remain a quiet possibility that life never brings close enough for me to reach, then at least I'll know this. I became someone who was ready, not perfect, not fearless, but open. And maybe, just maybe, that was always the point. Still, there are nights where I look at that empty chair and I wonder if somewhere you're looking at an empty space too.